of the web app. I'm going to show you also in this how I used it in my classroom. I'm going to pull up my Evernote account and kind of show you what it could look like, just as an option too. With the computer app, the very first thing you would need to do is sign in, which I know a lot of you said sitting here that you went ahead and downloaded the app. But signing in would take you to the next part. In this case here, the web app, I showed you this picture earlier. Just the idea of the toolbar is something that you're going to want to put onto your internet browser too, if that's something you're willing to put on there. But it does allow you to go into different websites and clip different information in multiple different ways. But like I said, it just gives you that elephant right in the top corner of your internet browser. This here, if I were to go ahead and click it, it's going to bring you right to the page. The best part about this is I actually have this in my Evernote account, and so what I'll have to do is just literally send it to you, and then you'll have the link ready to go right on your Evernote page also. And that will give you the elephant, the Evernote, right in the middle of your toolbar for you to be able to use. Alright, so this here is my Evernote page. It's not the actual Evernote app, but if I were to open it up, this is what it would go to. Just the idea that you have, just kind of trying to figure out what each button actually means. One thing I would recommend is to play around with it definitely, because that's going to help you be able to figure out what does what in particular. But the ones that I found were the most important is your shortcut tab. That takes you right to what it is that you're looking for. It allows you to kind of put in the different tag names. It allows you to go just by standard, but it also just the notes that you want quick access to are available right in that shortcut page. The other part there is the actual notes. And so, like for example, if I'm sitting at a small group table and we have a social studies note, we have a novel study note, then the idea of hitting the notebooks and then popping up the one that they actually want to be able to use. And so the notes there is an important piece. And then anything so right now if I were to hit notes, these would pop up. And so just the idea of being able to select your notes as you go about using them. And I'll show you too what it could look like. The one thing that we did have a little bit of a conversation with about before was syncing. So if I'm on my phone and I want to go ahead and capture something that I'm seeing, I would go ahead and use the web clipper to be able to keep it all on the same information. But then the idea of having to sync the device, I don't know if you've noticed at all, but on the bottom of the smartboard, it keeps coming up like synchronization complete. And so it's doing it on its own, but just in case if it doesn't, so like if I was doing something right on my laptop right in school and I wanted to give it to the students and it's not on theirs, then they would just have to hit sync and it would all of a sudden pop up for them to be able to use. So if you're ever on Evernote and you're like, I know I did that, I don't know where it is, chances are you did do it. You just have to hit the sync button for it to come up on the next device. It's like a way to update the system, to go through it that way. Now, just to give you an understanding of how I've used the web app in my classroom, I did mention the novel study previously, so I did use the Evernote for a novel study. What happened was we all had books and we, each chapter we really put different information on. So like chapter 1 was characterization, the second chapter was setting, and went through different skills that way. And we captured all of the information right onto Evernote. For example, this right here, this is actual student work. So this right here, a girl in my class, right before we started reading, I sent them a picture of the cover, and then they made their predictions on what they thought the book was going to be about. So, and this is the idea of Evernote, they allow you to annotate certain things. And so she went ahead and said, okay, well she knew what the necklace had to do with. She thought, the girl on the cover must be the main character. And then the number of the stars, she was taking the title and really just came up with a prediction of what she thought the book was going to be about.
So that print in red is something you're adding into that, her
Yes.
comments? She's not able to do that
That's
herself?
what she did.
So she wrote that herself?
Yes, she wrote that herself.
And what grade is this?
This is 5th grade.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yes, 5th grade. And so I did have the picture ready to go there so that she didn't have to go into Google and snip the picture out. it was just uploaded right onto, like I shared it with them. But then, you know, we all sat at a table and she came up with her predictions of what she thought the book was
So
going
what
to be
about the
about.
editing part of this and all for students? Is this checked by teachers all the time? Are they editing this themselves with the grammar and the mechanics of the writing? Or is it gonna, do they self, how does all that work?
You would need to sit with them and edit it with them.
So,
So like for me, it became a lesson within a lesson within a lesson.
but for
Um,
every student, you're having to do that?
Right, well, and if
One
you look
clip?
through them, they're not going to be perfect.
And that's okay?
And that's okay, cause if
Because that's
you-
not what the,
right, if I were to open up their
Okay.
social studies notebooks and that I looked at their reflections, they're not going to be perfect.
so
But
it's
really
just
the
more
content
just
behind it.
artifacts for them as
Right.
well as
Right, and you could keep it as a writing lesson too if you wanted, you know what I mean? So
for
let's say,
ongoing.
exactly,
for-
so let's say we have a social studies piece, you know, then the next week or, you know, whatever it is going back into that and creating a lesson plan just based on student writing examples. You know what I mean? So like for example, if looking at social studies, if she didn't capitalize any of the names, you know, then I could have a lesson on proper nouns and, you know, going through it that way. So that would be another tool to be able to use it for, especially if you have the technology to be able to hook their iPads up to the smartboard with the wire. I don't know if you have accessibility to that. Yeah. But like I said, these are student examples, so I did use it in social studies for a topic, but also for me too, to help understand what Evernote was really all about. And kind of, you know, checking to see, is this something the students were interested in doing? And it was, I can tell you based on that. The students definitely enjoyed it, which then, for me, I enjoyed it even more because they're taking that ownership within their learning. So yeah, again, so just the idea of like, and this is just examples, there's multiple different uses for it, but then using it in social studies too. So for anyone that has the app on your iPad or you're on the computer and you have your account going ahead to log in, the very first thing you would want to do is create a new note. So if you would like to do that right now, I would say that's probably a good starting point for you. But for me, when I logged into Evernote, it was like, okay, what now? And so I had to kind of step back and think, okay, well, what is it that I want to use this for? What am I going to be teaching? Do I want this for me? Do I want this for them? And kind of organizing your thoughts that way. But really the whole purpose of it is, you know, what do you teach? Do you want to keep your teaching portion separate from your personal? Because if so, that right there is going to be two different notebooks. Like for example, my students are going to want this portion, but they don't need to know about staff development. So keeping the ideas separate is really how you're going to want to start thinking, how are you going to organize yours? What do you want to use Evernote for? You might notice that the more you use it, the more things you want to use it for. But the idea of keeping it all organized, to me, is the whole purpose of it. So if you're on, you know, think about what do you want to use it for first? Do you want to use it for personal uses right now? Like, do you want to today kind of figure out how to actually use it? Or do you want to sit and try to figure out, okay, how can I get my students to use this? So that's a starting point for you to think about. Think about your students. What is it that your students need to best organize? So for example, if I were to go in the cubbies of my classroom, some students' notebooks are going to be very nicely organized, and then some I'm going to pick it out and all the papers are going to fall out. So what is it that the students best need to keep organized? Maybe it's their homework folder, maybe it's spelling words, you know, certain things like that. Just the idea of how can you use this to help them? Because again, that to you is going to be a starting point of what do you want to use Evernote for. Create the tabs, so again, the different notes. Think about what would you want to label them as. So I kept mine very simple. I literally picked social studies. At science, you know, ELA, I just kept the actual units, subjects that I teach. But you might want to even think about standards. You know, are you going to organize it by standard? I can tell you I know the standards, but I don't know, you know, if you say 531, you know, what's 531? So I have to, you know, step back and think that's not going to help me keep my information organized if I don't know what each standard is actually titled as. I did give you a couple examples, and I know we have all different grade levels going on in the room, but for me in particular, like Reconstruction. So if I had a social studies folder, then I could put reconstruction within my social studies folder. Math, making it so you have the different topics as your notebooks. So again, then when you go to look for the information, you can use the tags to help you, but then you also have it right there, organized, ready for you to go. If anyone's familiar with Pinterest, I related Evernote very much to Pinterest because it, like you could have a travel board and then all of your travel information's within that board. In this case here, just a little bit different because you're only captivating what you want. So Pinterest is like all over the place. You have to click on this, click on that, click on this just to get the recipe. Whereas Evernote, you can keep just the recipe. You don't have to, get the stepping stone points to get to where you need to go. But if you're, sitting there kind of trying to play around, again, think back, what do you want to use this for? How do you want to keep yourself organized? How do you want your students to be organized with it? I'm going to go ahead and click this. Once I click this, it's going to bring me right to my Evernote page. And just to show you again how I've gone about using this in my classroom, I will admit that when I started, I did sit in a small group setting. That way, if it turned out to be a disaster, it was just with a small group of students, and I could manage that setting. But then what ended up happening was from there, it wasn't a disaster, and it actually turned out to be a really pretty neat experience. And so we ended up bringing it into a whole group setting. What I have posted up here is my actual Evernote webpage. So like if you were to log in, this is what I would log into right now. The number of the stars is the novel study I said that I started with. And so again, just to give you the idea that this is student work. So if there's mistakes, I apologize up front. But you'll notice right now like the mouse is like lingering over this picture. And you'll notice that there's a little annotate button. I did not plan for this to pop up, but the good thing is, it did. Anytime you insert anything other than text, you have the ability to add any of your notes